If you want to shoot landscape photography as well as travel and street photography, and all of this work is supposed to hang on your wall someday, but you're not sure what camera system you're supposed to pick, this video will help you decide. If I think about it myself, I can't really believe it, but it's already been almost 4 years since I started doing photography. It started during COVID, beginning of it. I stumbled upon a couple of videos of people doing street photography, rainy cities, with the streets swept almost empty because of COVID back then. And after a couple of weeks of watching those videos, I decided I wanted to give it a go myself, and I had done some research. And yeah, I got myself an affordable entry-level APS-C camera from Nikon, I think. After some time, I even got a second lens, a prime lens, and honestly, at that point, I was sure I wanted to get into photography more and more and wanted to explore every different aspect of photography. So I started researching all the different camera systems. I watched reviews of the latest and greatest gear to figure out which one I should go with. And I realized something that most people were calling for enthusiast photographers to pursue the full-frame route with either Nikon, Canon, or Sony. But I also saw quite a lot of knowledgeable and experienced photographers actually not using full-frame cameras, but crop sensor cameras. And what stood out to me was that these people, almost all of them, actually came from full-frame cameras and switched to the crop sensor cameras. I was able to narrow down my interest in all the different photography aspects towards landscape and travel photography, so I wanted to find a good compromise between those two. I wanted to be able to shoot grand landscapes, intimate woodlands, but also go to tourist hotspots to basically shoot anything of interest I could find. But most importantly, I wanted to be able to print my work so I could show it off at home and yeah, basically look at my work anytime I wanted to. So there were two different aspects that kind of turned me away from full-frame cameras. First of all, the size and weight, but more importantly, honestly, the money would spend on all the gear. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some full-frame cameras that you can buy for basically the same price as your top-of-the-line APS-C cameras. That's not really the problem. The big problem is when you start building up your entire system with all the lenses, because spending up to 1,000 to 2,000 euros for one single lens just to be able to increase my photo image quality slightly really didn't seem worth to me. After some more research, I actually landed on the Fujifilm X system, also a crop sensor camera system. What hooked me up really was the retro styling the cameras have, or most of the cameras have, with all the physical dials and buttons with which you can change your ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and so on and so forth. It's just so much fun to use. As well as the size and weight of the cameras and the lenses as well. And honestly, most importantly, the price. In comparison to full frame, it's a steal. I think it's important for me to mention that when I say the price is low, it doesn't mean the quality of the lenses and cameras is bad, but that the price to performance ratio with these cameras as well as lenses is just incredible. Of course, just with anything else in life, you can also buy incredibly expensive Fujifilm lenses. The 16 to 55 spring to mind, also the 50 to 140, as well as the 150 to 600, I think. All of these three lenses are very bulky, have top-notch quality, but also the top-notch price. But that doesn't really matter because I wasn't interested in those lenses. As mentioned, I was looking for lenses that are both in size and weight very compact, as well as having a great price to performance ratio. So my camera of choice was and is still today the Fujifilm XT4, which I bought in a kit together with the 16 to 80 f4 lens, which is incredibly versatile. And just like anyone else, I added a couple of lenses over time. First of all, the 23mm f2 lens from Fujifilm, which I mostly use as a walk around and travel photography lens. Then the 12mm f2 from Samyang, so third-party lens, which I really only use when I go wider than 60mm, and that is very rarely, as well as the 70 to 300mm telephoto lens from Fujifilm. In terms of covering every aspect I like doing in photography, the Fujifilm X system does a great job with it being a very small and compact kit, and it's just so much fun to use all these physical dials when shooting. The only real downside for crop sensor camera systems is low light photography, in my opinion. Full frame cameras just have the edge because they don't have the crop factor and therefore just have faster f-stops. So for anyone that might wonder what I mean by that, is when you have a full frame as well as an APS-C lens and both of them are f1, that means the full frame lens is actually f1, but the APS-C lens is not actually aperture f1, it's f1.53 because of the crop factor. I don't really shoot any low light photography, that was a no-brainer for me, but if low light photography is something you do the majority of the time, you should consider full frame cameras or full frame camera systems. But Fujifilm also also has some lenses that have very low apertures, so that could help you out. But yeah, low light photography, full frame cameras just have the edge. A second thing that full frame cameras have the edge over cropped sensor camera systems is dynamic range. If you shoot a lot in very contrasty environments and you shoot handheld, that can be very important to you. But for my travel photography, I thought it might be a deal breaker, but actually I've never had a problem with that so far. And also for landscape photography, I exposure stack almost all of my images, so the dynamic range is really not a concern for me, because if you exposure stack them, they're as good as full frame cameras. So lastly, what was important for me is that I wanted to print my work, and that's what I've done. Over the last couple of years, I've printed plenty of my images, and I have not looked at a single image and thought or wished that the quality was better, so that's not really a concern to me. And I also think if you hyper-focus on things like image quality, most of the time the reason you do that is not because the image quality is per se bad, but because the subject of the image is just not very compelling, so you're trying to find other things in that image to criticize. For anyone interested, my biggest print so far has been 60 by 40 centimeters, and I have not had problems with that. I don't have any experience with bigger prints with my crop sensor Fujifilm camera, but I also don't think I would go bigger than that. If you now know if you should go the full frame route or if APS-C might be enough for whatever you want to shoot, you might want to find the perfect camera bag combination for landscape and travel photography, so check out this video.